Hey there. Welcome to MakingRealEstateFun.com. I'm Keith Hoffman with Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corp. And my co-hosts today are, as always, Kevin O'Flaherty with O'Flaherty Law.
Hello.
And Taji Clark with Coldwell Banker. Today we are at Angelo's Pizza, downtown Downers, and we have a wonderful guest that we'd like to introduce. This is Jim Droske, and he is owner and president of Illinois Credit Services.
Hello.
So what we want to do today is we want to talk a little about credit and how you can repair it, what to do, and I think we'll just start with you, Jim. So I know the biggest thing that we have as borrowers and buyers of homes is that some people don't have the greatest credit.
Right.
So when somebody doesn't have really good credit, they sometimes don't know what to do.
Right.
So it's always a great opportunity to give you a call. Tell me a little about your company and what you do.
Well, first off, about us, the company is Illinois Credit Services. We've been in business since 2009. We're not your typical internet-based credit repair company. Our business model it's based on referrals from mortgage brokers and realtors. What we do is when people want to make a purchase and they can't for lower credit scores, what we do is we help them work to repair their bad credit and build up the right mix of good credit. But the most important part of all that is to understand, first of all, what a credit score is. And a credit score is very different than a credit report. First off, when it comes to a credit score, most people think that a credit score is, they think it's a calculation or it's a number that's defining everything that they've already done in the past.
Okay.
And that's really not what a credit score is. A credit score is a prediction of what they're likely to do in the future. It's a predictive algorithm that's predicting the likelihood that they might go late on one of their bills within the next 24 months. And that's because that's what lenders want to know. If they lend you their money, are you going to pay them on time? So it's about making sure that they have the right mix of good credit, the right things on that credit report, because basically the past predicts the future. And what we do is we help them change some things on the past so that they have a better prediction and a better credit score.
Okay, so as a lender, we always wonder what credit companies actually do for their customers.
Sure.
Because, there's a ton of them out there.
Yep.
And basically what we do is we're not sure exactly what to do and what the costs are. So
Yep.
Can you give us a brief overview of
Sure.
how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, the most important part is there's no magic wand that just fixes credit. There's a lot of companies out there that they make a bunch of promises to you. They have excessive fees, and so you have to be sure that, first of all, any company you're working with is registered and bonded in the state that you're hiring them from and where you live. It comes down to a simple fact that everything on a credit report has something in common for all of our credit reports. We did not put any information on there.
Right.
Okay? And so that means that we have a right under law for that information to be correct and to be accurate, because otherwise, when someone runs our credit report, if somebody puts some information on there, they could be making decisions based on false information. So a consumer has a right under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to challenge and question anything that's on the credit report, because they didn't put the information there. We all have our credit reports, but that information was put there by someone else. Like, for example, medical collections. You've probably seen a lot of people at medical collections.
A ton of them.
Right?
A ton of them.
Have you ever met a consumer that has had any medical procedures done at a collection agency's office?
No.
Right? Clearly, because doctors don't work there. But what a consumer thinks is that when they go to the doctor's office and then it ends up on their credit report, they think the doctor put that on the credit report, and they did not. A third-party debt collector put it on their credit report. So a consumer has a right to know whether or not that information was properly assigned, transferred, or sold to that company properly under the law, under the Fair Debts Collections Practices Act. So it's all based, again, there's nothing magical or mysterious about it. It's all based on laws. It's based on systems. It's based on processes. So what we do as a credit repair company is we ask these companies questions. We write letters and we challenge information to these credit bureaus, to the collection agencies, to the creditors, and we challenge the information to make sure that they can prove that what they put on the credit report is accurate. If they can't prove it, by law, they must remove the information from the credit report. So the whole idea there is when they're trying to present a better past, we try to help them eliminate the unverifiable bad credit that's on the report. It doesn't mean they have to remove accurate information, but they do have to verify what they put on the credit report is accurate.
Okay, so once it's done and it's corrected, how long do you think it takes the credit bureaus to raise their scores based on whatever things you've done?
That's a good question. We get that all the time. Scores are, your credit reports are not sitting anywhere with a credit score on them right now. A credit score is a snapshot at the moment of when your credit is pulled. What they do is, I equate it to like a 3-car garage, right? You have TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Right now the doors are closed, and behind the scenes, all the information is getting transferred and updated by, and put on there. And then when they open the doors, they create an inquiry. They open the doors and they take a snapshot of whatever's in the garage. That is now their credit report. And now they grade that credit report and they give it a score. Then they close the doors. And then, so to answer your question, your credit scores are going to change the minute that anything changes on that credit report.
Right.
So if someone's trying to collect a debt from me and I either dispute the debt or it gets on my credit report and I want to settle it, if I go to you and I say, well, listen, I'd be happy to pay this $30 debt that accidentally went into collections because I didn't realize it was there, if they remove it from my credit report,
right?
Can they do that? Can they agree to, I'll pay what I owe, just take it off of my credit?
They used to. It's called a pay for deletion. They used to do that, and it stopped about probably 3 or 4 years ago. It's not that they're not willing to do it. The debt collectors don't really care about your credit report. They care about one thing, putting information on your credit report to harm you so that you're more willing to pay it, right? So you calling them up and saying, hey, I'll pay you either $30 or $300, and if you remove it, they would be very happy to do that. There's a reason why they won't do it now, is because everyone that reports information to your credit report is called a data furnisher. There's 10,000 of them in the United States. And every one of them has a data furnisher agreement with the credit bureaus. Well, there's verbiage in those agreements that says, by the credit bureaus, that says, if we catch you deleting accurate information because somebody paid you a payment, then you're compromising the integrity of our database. And if we catch you doing that, we're going to drop you from being able to report to our credit bureaus anytime in the future. So they won't do that anymore.
But it will have a positive effect on your credit report if you pay off the debt. I assume they file something that says...
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Okay. And here's the reason. It could. And the best 2 words in credit is it depends. And it really does. It just depends on the situation. But here's the thing. Paying a payment on a collection doesn't in itself make your scores better. And you've probably seen this, Keith, a lot, where people make a payment on a collection, or they want to buy a house, their credit scores are a little lower, and they look at all these old collections and say, honey, let's pay those so that we can improve our credit scores. And then you repull their credit and their scores have actually dropped.
Right.
The reason why that happens is you have to remember, credit scores are not just about debt. Credit scores are predictions of what you're likely to do in the future. So a credit score is not grading whether or not you paid that debt. A credit score is trying to predict, are you going to get another collection?
Now, isn't that based on what they've done in the past? So if you're a bad debt payer, you're most likely in the future going to have problems.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's all relative to, here, if today's date they're pulling your credit report and you have all this information on the report, whether it's old or new, recent stuff, old stuff. Let's imagine if you had a collection that was 5 years old here, and let's say you had a collection that was 30 days old. The one that's 30 days old is clearly more significant negatively for your credit report, right? Because it looks like you're in trouble now. One from 5 years ago is still part of your credit scores, and it makes a difference, but it's not as meaningful. Now, what most consumers think, and a lot of this is because no one ever explains how credit works, right? They don't teach it in schools, they don't teach it anywhere. So people are left to make some assumptions about how it works. So when they think pay it off and it makes it okay for their credit, when the reality is that a credit scoring model does not use the balance as an indicator of whether or not the account is okay. They use the date of the last activity for the collection. Now, when you make a payment on a 5-year-old collection, making a payment on a collection is classified as collection activity.
So that actually hurts your credit score.
Yes, it does. Because what happens, you take that 5-year-old collection, right? and you make a payment on it, it's a zero balance, and you have now told the scoring models that you have recent collection activity. And the problem is no one's ever going to explain that to anyone, because the debt collectors aren't going to tell you, because
Sure.
you're not going to pay them.
And that's why many times when, as a lender, sometimes we'll see something and we'll go, don't pay it right now. Pay it at closing if that fits their need.
Yes,
if that
correct.
fits how they need to work with their scores.
Yeah.
So then what would be the appropriate action that, the buyer or the creditee should take in order to improve their score?
Well, here, backing up a little bit. First thing, we don't want to tell everybody just don't pay your bills, right? Because that's not the right thing to do. People, you should always pay your obligations if they're legally owed, but you don't want to just do things that may be hurting your credit without realizing. So the answer is, first off, is be sure that you're asking questions about whether or not the information is accurate and correct. I mean, think about it. If it wasn't on your credit report, where would you prioritize whether or not you're going to pay that? Some people would prioritize a little different. It doesn't mean that if it's not on the credit that you don't owe the money. It just means that it might be prioritized a little bit differently. So the first and foremost thing that people need to do is to make sure the information is reporting accurate, that it's verifiable, and that it's correct. Now, the problem with that is that consumers have a right to work on their own credit. They have a right to ask questions. They have a right to write letters. They have a right to do all these things. The problem is it's extremely difficult for a consumer to ask questions about a system or a process that they don't know anything about.
Sure.
It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just, are you going to do it well? Are you going to ask the right questions? And believe me, the creditors, the debt collectors, the bank, they know this process very well, but they also understand that most consumers have no idea how it works. So, I mean, clearly there's a rule book out there, and they have it, and they know most people don't know what it is. And that's what we do as a credit repair company. We ask the questions for them. We ask the right questions, but at the same time that we're trying to eliminate and delete that unverifiable bad credit, we're also helping them build and establish the right mix of good credit. That is extremely important as well, that they're doing the right things.
So what are some of the right things that people can do other than not getting more debt?
Yeah, there's things I call actionable, right? One of the biggest things that people can do that has a very, very large impact on a credit score is balances on your credit cards in relation to your credit limits. Okay, now here, as you know, this has nothing to do with your income. Right. It's not debt to income, it's debt to utilization. If you have a $1,000 limit credit card and you owe $800, that's 80%. Now, what a lot of consumers where they get in trouble, and especially around the holidays, they'll go out and get these $300 cards or $500 cards. Those cards can be very dangerous because if you have a $300 credit card in your pocket, it's very easy to charge up $250, $300, you max it out, and you can make the payments every single month on time on a $300 credit card. But if you owe $250, depending on other things that are going on in your credit, you could actually be dropping your credit scores anywhere from 5 to 40 points.
Right.
But those are snapshots, right? So if you have a habit of carrying a balance of 80%,
Yes.
and then you pay it down to below 50% like you're supposed to, give it enough time for it to be reported.
Yes.
Then your credit should snap back to where it would have been even.
That's correct. It is a snapshot. The percentage you actually want to target, it's not necessarily, 50 is better than 100, right? 30 is better than 50. The actual, the target percentage you want to be at is about 10%. That's the target to optimize your credit scores, okay? Now,
Which is difficult for Americans these days because they have a lot of debt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I always remember hearing 30% or less than 30% for.
But again, 30 is better than 50.
Right.
It's just it's all relative to
But
where
you don't
you're
want
at.
it to be zero, right? Because
No.
you want to show that you're using the credit.
No, right. There's a phrase that they don't tell you. It's use but don't abuse. They want to see you using your credit, but they don't want to see you abusing your credit. They just don't explain that to you. And that's why when people are trying to rebuild their credit and they go out and get that $300 secured credit card and they charge up a couple tanks of gas and go out to eat once and whatever, and that and they pay every payment on time, they're getting nowhere. They get frustrated because their scores aren't really improving, but they think they're doing everything right for one reason. They're paying that card every single month on time, which is the right thing, but what they're not being explained is that making your payment history is 35% of your credit scores. Your debt ratios that we're discussing right now is 30% of your scores. It's almost as meaningful as paying late.
Right.
And because what they've determined is that balances on credit cards is extremely predictive of going late in the future. So the higher that percentage is, the more likely that they feel that you're going to go late, so they'll drop your credit scores. It's all about predicting what you're going to do, not necessarily what you're doing at the moment.
So I have a question for you.
Yep.
For the the watchers and the listeners out there, what are the top 3 things that a person can do? Maybe they're in bad credit situation. What are the top 3 things they can do to improve it?
Well, if you're in a bad credit situation, I'd probably say the number one thing would be to call me. But first thing is check your balances. And also make sure that a lot of people, when they've had problems with credit, they tend to shy away from the credit cards and then they don't get any anymore. Because the thought process sometimes is, okay, if I don't have any credit cards, I can't go late. If I can't go late, I can't have bad credit. It doesn't work that way. You do have to have some credit cards. So you just have to use them properly. So you want to make sure that you're verifying, that you're making sure you have credit cards, you're utilizing the right proper way, and you don't want to get too many too fast, right? If you don't have any, you want to get one, or become maybe an authorized user on somebody's account, or you want to have 2 or 3 over time, but you don't want to get too many too quickly. Make sure the balances are right. And then make sure all the information that is negative on your credit is accurate and correct. First thing you do have to do, though, if you are behind on anything, you have to get current as quickly as possible.
One of the things that every consumer is allowed by law is a free credit report.
Yes.
So if they go to annualcreditreport.com, they can request one pull from each bureau once a year.
Every 12 months, yeah.
So that's kind of a nice thing. Of course, they don't show your credit scores,
Right.
Which is not important.
No,
that's not really important.
They've actually changed that now with an Attorney General settlement that happened with 33 states. Now you can get that annual credit report poll more than once if you've disputed information and
Right.
they've made a change. Now they'll give it to you again. But yeah, you're right. And they don't have scores on them. But here's the thing about scores. We should talk about that real quick. There's 3 credit bureaus, right? There's TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax.
Right.
But there is not one credit score for each one of those. There are actually hundreds of credit scoring models that are out there. So it's very important to know that when you pull a credit report, or you go to a car dealership and pull a credit report, or you go to Credit Karma, every one of those, you can do all those exactly the same day, and they could be looking at the same credit report, the same garage opens up, right? And your scores can be different on every one of them because the algorithms that are creating those credit scores are different. Even FICO scores, right? FICO scores are the ones that lenders use 90% of the times. There's actually 65 different models of the FICO scoring models that are available. There's not even one FICO score.
Right.
So there's a lot of them. And the key is they're all based on the same information that's in the report. So the healthy credit report tends to yield better scores throughout all the scoring models. You just have to be sure, you go to Credit Karma and you pull your credit report and it says 660, and then they go to you and pull it, and it might not be the same scores.
And I've had that happen before. I had a
Right.
consumer come to me and say, "What's my score?" And I told them, and they said, "Well, I have my score from Credit Karma, and it's completely different than what
Sure.
you said." And I said, "It's a different scoring model."
Right.
So I had to show them the different models that are available,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got to understand. Now they understand why it was like that.
Right.
The other thing that's really nice is that everybody has credit cards, and anybody that wants to opt out of their ability to sell that information to somebody, they can go to optoutprescreen.com,
Sure.
and it's free, and you can opt out for your credit to be sold to the credit to the people or businesses that want to buy it from the bureaus, because they have the right to sell it.
Sure.
But as consumers, we have a right to know that we don't want to have it sold, so that's where they go. and it's real easy, from there.
Did you know actually 95% of the credit bureau's income is from selling the credit reports for advertising purposes?
sure.
Only 5% is for credit pulls. It's for that selling of that information for advertising purposes.
It's funny because I would get something in the mail, and I wonder, where did this come from? Like, how did they know I'm living here and this is what I'm doing, and it's all because of the credit companies selling your information.
Absolutely. The best thing that I always tell people to do, we've all heard about like data breaching, right? Target's been breached, IRS has been breached. There's probably not a person that we know, including us, that has not had their data breached at one point or another.
Yeah.
And what they do, they come out and they tell you, hey, I'd get LifeLock and all these different monitoring sites. And I'm not saying those are bad, but that's not the ultimate protection of your credit reports. If you really wanted to protect your credit reports, you do a thing called freezing your credit reports, which they don't really. Have you heard that?
I've heard of that.
Okay, you're ahead of the game.
I just heard of it recently, actually.
Now, you don't want to do that if you're going to be purchasing a home.
No, correct.
I can
correct.
tell you that right now.
Yeah. No. You call Keith first, and then you freeze them. But here's the thing: once you freeze them, you can thaw them in 90 seconds online. It's very simple.
Right.
All it does is it freezes the reports so third-party creditors cannot pull your credit reports until you thaw the credit report with a key code that they give you. So it's the ultimate in protection.
Well, thanks so much for all the information today, Jim. It's
My
been a
pleasure.
pleasure having you. If people want to reach you to get some help with credit repair, how can they reach you?
Our number is 630-427-8500, and our website is IllinoisCreditServices.com.
Keith, how can people reach you?
They can just pick up the phone and call me at 630-306-LOAN. That's 306-5626. My office is 630-376-2100. Just ask for me. That's the best way.
Taji, how about you? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to get me is my website, just tajiclark.com. All of my contact information is there, my social sites. Any way you want to reach me, you'll be able to reach me on my website.
You can schedule a free consultation with me at O'Flaherty Law at 630-324-6666. We do almost every area of law, including real estate and bankruptcy law. You can find more of our videos and podcasts about real estate at makingrealestatefun.com, or check out my legal podcast at learn-about-law.com, or my business owner podcast at seizeyourbusiness.com. Thanks so much for listening.
Let's have a little toast. Gentlemen,
You're here.
thanks, Jim.
Cheers.